Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Paul, coming to you in just a moment. This is what you're saying on the text, tweets and emails. Tom in Bournemouth, you've been wrong about opening up too early, and you're wrong again. I'm completely behind the cautious approach, especially as only 50% have had both doses. The last thing we need to do is to import a different strain that evades the vaccine. Meanwhile, this comes in from Tamas. I'm devastated. My mum had surgery with cancer 2 days ago. I must go home to visit her. Did we really vote for this incompetent government? How many people go to Europe from Nepal? Most EU countries have low or even less infection than us. It's shame on them. Those are the two sides of it. Now, we've talked to people with businesses in Portugal. Let's speak with Paul, who's in Albufeira, who I think you went on holiday or business yourself. You're trying to get home. Is that right, Paul? Good morning.
That's right, yes. We're due to come back on Tuesday, and we're stuck out here. We can't get a flight back on Monday. We're a family of 4. And it's going to cost us several £100s to get these.
Oh, no, I wanted to hear more. Paul, can you hear me? Paul, can you hear me? Several £100, the line dropped, Paul. Several £100 to get what, the testing, is that right? Oh, there we are. Lost all connection with Albufeira. It's a bit like the British government. Can we try Paul again? I would really like to speak with him. Joe in Islington. Joe, you're half Portuguese, is that right? Good morning.
Yeah, morning, Nick.
Yes, sir. Your view. Yeah, I'm really frustrated for folk over there. I'm completely puzzled, confused and disappointed in a government that seems utterly spineless.
Yeah, equally. As you said, half Portuguese. I was actually in Porto, where my family are involved in wine and wine tourism last week, up until just before the football.
Yeah.
And, extraordinarily disappointing. But to be frank, the performance and the behaviour of the football fans was just extraordinary, incredibly disrespectful.
Oh, was it really? I'm so
sorry.
Really
not following, sort of any of the guidance, really, and that was the majority of them. And I feel rather disappointed for all the people, the holiday makers, the travellers that you mentioned, for family and everything, being put back because of many of those actions. Cases in Porto have gone up. We've seen Gove has been sent his text about having come into contact, and honestly, just the sheer arrogance of it was.
Would it come through that quickly? What these blokes were doing? I say blokes. It may have been women as well. What these folks were doing, 6-7 days ago? Would it hit the figures that quickly? Then, do you think?
Yes, yeah, immediately. I mean, already, like I said, Michael Gove has received a text having been at the match that he's, he came into contact with someone. I see. The testing in Portugal and in Porto in particular has been absolutely fantastic. When I was there, being tested every 2 or 3 days because I have been travelling up until this point during the green period back and forth for work and also for family, and it's extraordinary. And
it is, and it's appalling then that has fed into it. Joe, thank you. I must move on. Best wishes to your family, because you mentioned Michael Gove. I don't have him, but I have one of his cabinet colleagues. That's Housing, Communities and Local Government Secretary Robert Jenrick, who joins me now. And I know we're going to speak about an exciting Own Your Home initiative in just a moment, Mr. Jenrick. But first, I have to put you the news regarding Portugal. Where was it put on the green watch list? When did that happen? I must have missed it. Good morning.
Hello, good morning, Nick. Well, I appreciate that yesterday's news is difficult for many people, particularly those who've made bookings or are having to cut short their holidays, people who work in the travel industry. But we were clear from the start that we wouldn't hesitate to take action.
No, but where was the watch list? We were told people would be given notice, Mr. Jenrick.
Well, we said that we would review the countries on the list every 3 weeks, and that's what happened.
Let me play you. Perhaps you're not aware of this. I wonder if you'd like to listen to your colleague, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, speaking with me just in April.
We're going to have a green watch list this year. Now, that means that we'll be letting people know where we have a country which may be coming onto the horizon as a concern, but remain in the green list for the moment. That will help provide people a bit of forward guidance. I hope to avoid some of the scenes we saw last year where suddenly the country moves.
So I put it to you again. You failed, not you personally, to put Portugal on the green watch list, and you failed to give them that warning, didn't you? Why?
Well, we have given people notice, so they can return before Tuesday, but I appreciate that's a
No, where was the watch list? Where was the watch list warning? Mr. Shapps specifically spelt that out, that we wouldn't have the situation last year, people racing around trying to book last-minute flights. I put it to you again. not you, but the government has failed yet again to give British citizens notice to come home early, haven't you?
No, I don't think that's fair. The situation is developing quickly in Portugal as around the world. This is a fast-moving position with the virus. Two things have happened in Portugal in recent weeks. There's been a doubling in positivity since the last time we...
I'm not disputing that, Mr. Jenrick. I'm asking where that... I put it to you for the fourth time. I'm not disputing that cases have increased. I get that, and I get it's a fast-moving case, and I get you're working very hard to protect the citizens. But you can't have one of your senior colleagues promise a watch list so people feel a degree of comfort going to Portugal or wherever else it might be, Spain or Greece, and then as and when a fast-moving situation alters, you give no warning whatsoever. You can't justify that. It's a shambles, Mr. Jenrick.
There wasn't, in this case, there wasn't time to move.
So the watch list, so we're scrapping, so just so we're plain, just so we're candid with you, there will be no watch list this year.
Well, the watch list remains as an option. But
what happened yesterday then?
If the situation is developing fast, it's right that we take action as quickly as we can. We need to be decisive in the way we tackle this. And in Portugal...
Why did it take so long over India, putting that on the red list, if we need to move fast?
Well, let me just make the point about Portugal, if I may. Not only do we see a doubling in positivity in just 3 weeks, taking levels to much higher than we're seeing here in the UK, but arguably more importantly, we've seen much more recently evidence of a further mutation in the virus, what's being called the Nepal variant. And that necessitates us moving quicker than perhaps some people would have wished. I think it's the right approach because that extra caution will help to protect the UK. We don't yet know whether this new variant is a cause of concern, but our scientists are researching that right now and are seeing how transmissible it is, how virulent it is, and most importantly, whether or not the current set of vaccines are effective against it. Okay. And so we have a choice as to whether to delay or to take action right now whilst we learn about the new Nepal variant. And I think that was the right call to ensure that we are cautious, particularly given the progress that we're making back home with our own vaccine rollout, particularly given that we're coming up to an important decision point about whether we can do a further reopening on the 21st of June.
You moved within hours as regarding Portugal. It took weeks to put India on the red list. Explain.
Well, we're taking a cautious approach. I think from your question, you support that and think that we should be being careful.
I support consistency, that if you promise British citizens you'll give them something, you give them something. Or if it is just effectively a fast-moving scene and you have effectively no control, just tell people that and you won't have families stranded at the end of half-term in Portugal.
Well, let me be clear. People shouldn't be going on holiday to countries that are on the red or the amber list.
They didn't. They went on holiday to a country that was on the green list, Mr. Jenrick, probably thinking that they would be acquainted with what's called the watch list, which clearly now is, like many politicians' promises, just in tatters.
Well, if you do book a holiday to a country that's currently on the green list, you do have to be aware that we're reviewing the list every 3 weeks. That this is a fast-moving situation. And I would advise you to make sure that your travel operators, most are offering flexibility so that you can reschedule or get a refund if that's required.
Why don't you just say, don't go on holiday? Mr. Jenrick, why don't you just tell people, don't go on holiday? Period, ends.
Well, I think a lot of people will be choosing to go on holiday in the UK this summer.
Don't go on an overseas holiday. We are telling you, do not go on an overseas holiday. Why don't you just say it? Be big, brave and bold enough.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. What our position is...
So we can go on holiday?
You shouldn't be going on holiday to any country that's on the red or the amber list. I wouldn't recommend speculatively booking holidays to those places either. If you do choose to book one to a country that's currently on the green list, be careful because things can change, as we've seen. And if you do that, then certainly make sure that you're doing it with an operator that could give you the degree of flexibility that you need so you don't find yourself losing out.
Let me, lastly, other foreign matters. There is, I read, a growing revolt or rebellion over the COVID-timed cut to foreign aid from 0.7 to 0.5, and it seems to be some of your fellow colleagues, some heavy hitters, if I may use that expression. Are the Conservatives, is your government going to suffer a defeat over this next week, or are we going to see a change in policy?
Well, I hope not. I mean, we were clear at the time that we want the UK to be a world leader in the way that we're working internationally. We are. We remain one of the biggest donors in the G7. We're going to this year to be providing 0.5% of GDA for international aid. We're the biggest donor at the moment for vaccine research and development, all things we should rightly be proud of as a country. But we've also just been through a once in 100-year, maybe once in 300-year event, which has put enormous pressure on the public finances. And it's sensible to spend £400 billion in a year on our response to COVID-19 to exercise degree of fiscal responsibility and to reduce that as a one-off. The legislation, actually, that was passed in the coalition government envisaged this situation as much as one could. It said that if there are periods of exceptional circumstances, then the amount of international aid that we're providing could be reduced on a temporary basis.
I have one eye on the clock, and I am a man of my word. Whether the government is for my listeners to decide. I did say I'd allow you to talk about your Own Your Home scheme. I wonder if you could do that briefly, Mr. Jenrick.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm sat in a show home in Bolsover for the first of our first homes. These are properties that are going to be sold at a discount of at least 30% to first-time buyers and key workers like NHS workers, veterans and police officers who live in their area and want to put down roots, get a home of their own. We're doing a pilot here in Bolsover. There'll be more over the course of the summer. And we want to get to the point where there's at least 11,000 of these properties available in all parts of the country so that young people and key workers have a better chance of getting on the housing ladder in their home area.
Housing, Communities and Local Government Secretary Robert Jenrick, thanks for your time here on LBC. It's 2 minutes after 8. We must go to the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, officials in Portugal have questioned the logic of the decision to add the country onto the UK's amber list of travel destinations. From Tuesday, people returning to Britain from there will have to quarantine. The travel industry's reacted with dismay. The boss of Heathrow has accused the government of all but guaranteeing another lost summer for the sector. Sir Mike Rake, the former chairman of EasyJet, says the decision came as a huge surprise.
The expectation was that now that we had a serious vaccine program, we have a very good testing program, many protocols are in place, that we'd have a kind of coherent and predictable policy for travel. And it isn't just, by the way, about tourism, it's about business, it's about the economy, it's about the supply chains.
Ministers say they're taking a cautious approach, citing a rise in COVID cases in Portugal and the emergence of a new mutation. A further easing of lockdown in Wales will go ahead from Monday. Up to 30 people will be allowed to meet outdoors in places like private gardens, parks and beaches. First Minister Mark Drakeford has confirmed the rules for organised outdoor events will also change.
We'll set new limits so that up to 4,000 people will be able to attend an event which is a standing event, and 10,000 people would be able to attend an event that was a seated event. So that's a sports event or an arts event.
A 14-year-old boy is among two more people who've been charged with the murder of a teenager in Birmingham. Dijon Reed, who was also 14, was chased and stabbed in the King's Standing area on Monday. Police are searching for a girl believed to be around 5 years old who was seen out walking by herself in Nottinghamshire. She was spotted in Ollerton just before midnight. A drone and sniffer dogs are being used in the search. Scientists say they've made a breakthrough in the treatment of hereditary breast cancer. A major trial saw the use of the drug olaparib after chemotherapy. The researchers found that giving it to women at an early stage significantly reduces the risk of the disease returning or spreading. And with a week to go until the start of Euro 2020, the trophy for the tournament arrives in London later. It's been touring the 11 host cities of the Games. All of England's group matches, as well as the semi-finals and final, will be played at Wembley. In the city, the FTSE 100 is just reopening at 70.64 after closing down 43 points yesterday. The pound buys $1.40 and €1.16. And the weather cloudy in the east and southeast with some rain. Sunny spells elsewhere, particularly for Wales and the west and north of England. The odd shower for Northern Ireland and western Scotland. A high of 21 degrees. From Global's newsroom, I'm Simon Conway.
Ollie's, thank you.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Morning, it's 6 minutes after 8 on Friday, June the 4th. Coming up in this hour, we'll get back to that foreign aid debate. As it would appear, a fairly sizable Conservative rebellion is on the cards for next week. In other news, a night of violence, actually 12 hours of violence across London. A series of knife and gun attacks and police pelted with stones and other missiles. Full details on that. In other news, Stonewall advises organisations to replace what word to help boost rankings and ratings on an equality leaderboard? A word that I would imagine you use almost on a daily basis. Yes, that will join the list, but I'll tell you what word it is a little later in the hour. And come on, no more excuses for shirking from home. The Queen went back